Before coming on air, I did speak to Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister at the Home Office. Thank you so much for being on the programme. What is your reaction to Dame Louise Casey's review?
Look, I've worked in this field for many years and in some cases worked alongside Louise Casey and the people who appear in her review. So a lot of it wasn't a huge surprise to me, but it makes me feel incredibly angry and incredibly tired that it tracks a period from 2009 to 2025 of this review, that review, and very little change. And that makes me feel cross, angry, upset. But I'm eternally grateful to her for the audit that she has undertaken, and I think her recommendations are good and strong. The difference, I suppose, that has to be the case on these recommendations is that they have to be delivered.
Before I ask this question, I want to make it really clear that you, as you allude to, have got an incredible track record in helping women and girls who are the victims of sexual crimes. It's something you've dedicated your life to, right? But my question is this, there is nothing in this audit, as you say, that we didn't know before. So why did Labour vote against a national inquiry into grooming gangs at the beginning of the year, but now you've changed your mind?
Well, look, I never didn't want any inquiries, and that was never, ever the point. What I have seen from my experience is national inquiries leading to no change, which is exactly what Louise Casey has found. The inquiries, whether it was in Rotherham back in 2013, right up until the ICSA recommendations undertaken by Professor Alexis Jay, which just sat on a shelf. And so you have to understand my concern about spending millions on inquiries that don't lead to any change. What I had seen over the years is really good local inquiries in Telford, where I supported some of the victims, that actually led to direct change. Now, the victims in those cases...
So why have you changed your mind then? That's the question.
So the victims in those cases in Telford, when they came to see us some months ago, one of the complaints that they made was that it might change things locally, it hasn't changed anything nationally, and none of the findings have led to any national change. And funnily enough, one of them actually is around taxis, which appears in Louise Casey's review. And so I take that on board. I also met victims recently who said, I don't want a big national inquiry, I don't want another ICSA. What I want is a local inquiry with the power to compel people. And so Louise Casey, what she has suggested is that. She has suggested a series of local investigations that have the power of a national body, of a national inquiry, to compel places to undertake them and to compel witnesses. And that was an issue that needed ironing out. And I come to this view, having spoken to Louise Casey, looked at her evidence and also looked at what the victims have been telling me.
I want to ask you about the specifics in this audit as well, from what Dame Louise Casey is saying specifically about ethnicity, because she is pretty brave with what she's saying, I think, in this.
Oh, I think she's factual.
Do you think there is a specific problem with British Asian men and perhaps specifically British Pakistani men and group child sexual exploitation?
Some British Pakistani men, yes, there is it doesn't matter what I think. The evidence is there. How people think about this should never have been the thing that anybody paid any attention to, because some people think that all people of Pakistani origin are abusers, and some people think that none of them are. Thinking has got us nowhere. What the ICSA recommendation was that we needed better ethnicity data. We still don't have it. What Baroness Casey has recommended, which we will undertake, is the mandatory recording of ethnicity of perpetrators of child sexual abuse. What she has looked at, admittedly, just in 3 police force areas in the review, found an overrepresentation of Asian or British Pakistani origin males. It doesn't matter how I feel about that. Those are the facts. And if we ignore that, how can we ever come up with solutions?
It feels like at the heart of this is misogyny.
Of course, they're all men, aren't they? That's the other characteristic that all of these abusers have.
And this belief that the girls were, the children,
Yeah.
were worthless.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I think that sometimes in the debate about the ethnicity, which, it has been, that's not new news. This has been written in many reviews over the years. It's just nothing has ever been done about it to improve the data. We will do that. But what often gets lost for me is actually the way we dismiss women's, and especially young girls' voices. Treat them as if they're criminals, treat them as if they're, sluts and hussies and they were asking for it. That existed for far too long. And one of the things that we will do off the back of this report, and we're trained to do anyway, is get rid of the convictions for anyone under 18 who was accused of being a prostitute. These are children. And so, the misogyny, as much as anything else, lies at the heart of this.
And as you said, the state reaction to it, but I guess also the perpetrators as well.
Oh, yeah,
and do you think that there is an issue with misogyny in certain cultures and communities as well?
I've not yet found a certain community that doesn't have a problem with misogyny. There is no shortage of women on the list I read out every year from every single community that lives in the UK that have murdered their partners or murdered a stranger woman on the street. But look, I think that what Baroness Casey finds is that nobody's ever looked into the cultural aspect of what leads to that group being overrepresented in this crime. That is why we have committed to do a piece of research into that. But if you could tell me which particular community has absolutely no misogyny, I might go and live there.